well, here we are. Two. The story is called Two. Signs and coincidences from God, Part 2. And just a note, I've done this already. Part 2. Got to the end. Another half an hour. Wouldn't you know, something happened with my audio, and I had to do it again. I kid you not, can't even make that up. So Part 2, had to do twice. I just kid you not. Something I got to do differently, so I figured, well, what do I got to do differently, Lord? And I made this little sign, because this will pop up in the front of the video, and then I'll just change this number here, part 2, part 3, 4, whatever it takes, and then I'll have this as my opening scene every time. So that's something I changed, so kind of cool. All right, let's get into it. We did all the preface, and we were at right here. May 4th, 2003, the second Sunday after Easter. In this year, this day was also called Orthodox Easter. I received a series of signs of the number 2. It wasn't until about 8:30 in the evening that I even realized that they were happening. At this time, I went to the local grocery store to purchase some milk and get a newspaper. I also bought another item like cheese or something of that nature. I went to the milk section and I remembered looking at the coolers of milk. On my left side was the milk from the cows that were not treated with the hormone RBST. On the right side, the milk from cows treated with it. I thought I will pay the extra few pennies for the milk without the hormone drug. I know what hormones do to teenagers and women. I laughed to myself inside. I reached into the cooler and grabbed a gallon of 1% milk. I always drink 1% milk as it has less fat. We have been drinking 1% milk in my family for at least 10 years now or more. I used to drink whole milk when I was a younger child, then my mom switched to drinking 2% milk. I later tried 1% milk and thought it was not that bad, so I stuck with it, always buying that kind. I have tried skim milk, but it just tastes too watered down for me. 1% milk is about right. I heard there might be 0.5% milk coming out. I would try that if they did, but I have yet to see such thing in the stores. What percent is skim milk anyway? 0% fat? Years after I wrote this, I now drink whole milk. My body digests it much better for some reason. Side note, I thought I was getting lactose intolerant. I just couldn't handle drinking milk anymore. I went back to drinking whole milk. No more issues. Interesting. So I don't drink 2%, 1% skim. I don't drink any of that. I just drink whole milk now. No lactose issues. I grabbed a gallon of milk but at this time it was 1% for 10 years. Okay, 10 years. You got to remember that. I grabbed a gallon of milk out of the cooler and then the cheese. I think it was cheese. I still can't remember that second item, but I think it was some cheese. And proceeded to the counter to pay for my items. I told the cashier that I was going to grab a newspaper on my way out of the door from the stack of them that were there. Oh, excuse me. So she grabbed the items. I paid for them and left. I was carrying my bag of groceries in my left hand, and with my right hand, I reached into the stack of papers, and I squeezed it and grabbed one. I squeezed it really tight as I did not want to lose any of the sales ad inserts that were placed inside. You can't lose the sale ads. It was the main reason I was buying a paper in the first place. I put the bag of groceries and the paper in the back seat of my truck and I headed home. I arrived home and opened the back door to my truck. I grabbed the newspaper first. I then noticed there were 2 newspapers. I thought, uh-oh, I stole a newspaper. Even accidentally, the fact remained that somehow I grabbed two newspapers and did not pay for the extra one, which was now in my possession. I was bummed out and thought, what if the cashier had seen me grab the newspapers and flip them onto my shoulder as I walked out of the store? They would surely think that I was trying to pull a fast one by stealing one. I was feeling guilty. Yes, I was, once I realized it. I went into my house and set the grocery bag down on the kitchen counter. I then went into the bedroom where my wife was watching TV. I told her about grabbing the extra newspaper by accident and that I felt bad about it. I didn't want anyone to think that I would steal a newspaper. My wife then asked me how many newspapers were left at the store, to which I replied, about 40 or so, I think. She said, well, they will never sell all of them at this time of the night, and they would be picking up the extras soon and dropping off the Monday papers. I agreed with her, but I still felt bad. I wanted to go back to the store and bring back the paper. That would be embarrassing, but at least my conscience would be clear. Just then my son yelled in from the kitchen, Dad, why did you buy 2% milk? I said to him, I didn't buy 2% milk. I bought 1% milk, and I always buy 1% milk. My son said, well, there is a gallon of 2% milk in this bag, so unless you are losing your marbles, how would you explain this? I went to witness this myself in the kitchen, and sure enough, there was a gallon of 2% milk. I just sat there and thought, how odd. I mean, I was really sure. I reached in and I grabbed blue. Blue is the color of 2% milk. Yellow is 1% milk. I know what I grabbed. Yet I get home stunned. I'm just like, what's going on here? Okay, so um, I just sat there and thought, how odd. Now, right there and then, I had this thought come over me, and I had to think of how odd it was for me to go to the store and have these two things happen to me totally by mistake. I had to think that I could see one thing happening by mistake, but for two things to happen like this seemed just a bit too odd. I mean, two newspapers? Who would do that? You only need one. I guess unless you're trying to malt up on the you know, accumulate extra coupons. But I wasn't. One set of ads was enough. And then I buy 2% milk by mistake. Two papers, 2% milk, two mistakes, same time, same grocery store, same gas station. I'm just kind of freaking out here. Um, then my wife said, and this is the second Sunday in a row that something odd has happened to you. I said, yeah, you're right. So then I said to my son, what have we done all day today? Earlier that day, we went to the No Tap bowling tournament in Cloquet, Minnesota. I was on a team with my friend Mike W. from the west side of St. Paul, Jeff, Dick, and Rocky. Jeff is Wendy's husband, and Dick is Wendy's father-in-law. It's interesting. Okay, this was from 2003, and I haven't seen Jeff and Wendy in years. Um, today is Friday, the 15th of January, and Sunday I just ran into Jeff and Wendy out on the lake ice fishing with my wife, and they told me of a restaurant to go to have something to eat. Kid you not? That's funny that I haven't run into them in years. Here I bowled with Jeff and Dick. This is weird. Okay, so I just ran into Jeff and Wendy. Wow. All right, Jeff is Wendy's husband and Dick is Wendy's father-in-law. I work with Wendy at the prison. Rocky is on my local bowling team. It was the second year that I bowled in this tournament. It was also my friend Mike W.'s second year that he bowled in this tournament. I bowled 4 games in that tournament, nothing special there. I didn't even score high enough to place in the prize money. My son said that was true, but surprisingly pointed out to me that I had bowled two 180 something games and two 230 something games. I said, "Wow, I guess you are right, Mike. What else did we do today?" He said to me then, "We came home and played some box hockey. We played two games." I then said, "And I won them both." And I razzed him a bit for it laughingly. "Well, yeah, I guess we did, but I always whoop on you when we play that game, so that is nothing new. LOL." My son looked at me with a slight tone of getting a little cocky now, aren't we, Dad? Okay, okay, I said. What did we do next? He said, "You took a nap, Dad, but the nap was exactly 2 hours long." I'm like, "Really?" I questioned. "How do you know it was exactly 2 hours?" He said, "Because I looked at the clock and I remembered looking at it again when Mom came home with dinner." At this point, things are starting to seem like an episode of The Twilight Zone, and we all just looked at each other and thought, what next? I sat there and I thought about things for a minute. I said, when we ate dinner, I said to my wife and son, Mom brought home Arby's roast beef sandwiches. They were on sale, 5 for $5. She bought two of those specials and came home with 10 sandwiches. Do you know what? I only ate two of them and used 2 packets of Arby's sauce. We all laughed. Usually I would eat 3 or 4 of those sandwiches, but today I only ate two. There we all were again, thinking, wow, this is really odd. I was feeling giddy, like a kid in a candy store with birthday money from my grandparents, and no one around to tell me what I could or couldn't buy. I remember when I was a kid, and with a quarter I could go to the corner store and I could buy a whole bag of penny candy. You could get a wide variety of candy. I would fill up the bag and go find my friends, and we would all share in a candy feast. That was fun, and I was thinking how fun this story was going to be to share with my friends. I was kind of like, wow, this is kind of cool, man. What's going on? It was like all this new revelation, but I just couldn't believe that these twos was happening. So it was about at this point that I really started doing some soul searching, and I just knew right then and there that I was in the middle of something very supernatural. Although simple and fun, yet amazingly supernatural. I just knew it was my sign from God that I had asked for. Like I just knew it. I asked God for a fun sign and not a scary one, but a sign that could not be discounted as a mere random occurrence. I was really starting to feel an overwhelming sense of joy about it. I thought about it some more, and my son was staring at me. I then said, "This has to be a sign. What if I didn't pick up on it? Would I have known? Would I have figured this out?" So then I got an idea from out of nowhere in my head to check my pockets. I now know that when these thoughts come into my head like this, that it is for a reason and that it is God's way of communicating with me through the Holy Spirit. So I went with the flow and said out loud to my son and my wife, what is in my pockets right now?" I just knew there would be another two of something. They looked at me eagerly, waiting to see what I would find. And I was even acting like an excited child on Christmas morning. I reached into my left pocket and found nothing at all. I reached into my right pocket, and of course it had to be the second pocket in which I picked, and pulled out two paper coupons. They were coupons in which the sponsors of the bowling tournament, a local casino near there, had given to each one of the bowlers. Each bowler was to receive one coupon. The coupon was to redeem a coupon booklet at the casino to get free quarters and match play coupons at the gaming table. The reason that I had two of them was that Rocky, who I bowled with earlier that day, did not want his. He asked me if I wanted it, and I said, sure, not knowing if I would even go, but I sometimes did in the past. So I took it and put it in my pocket. I haven't been to a casino in 20 years. I kid you not. I just don't go anymore. So, usually I have change, keys, breath mints, a plethora of other items. Not now, just two coupons. So as we all laughed again at how weird this was getting, I was thinking, how fun is this? Is it over? Is there more? I never even used the coupons. My son went into the kitchen, and while walking away, he said, "Dad, you're freaking out," and laughed again. "Don't you think this is neat?" I asked him. He just acted like this is weird as all. My wife was in the bedroom where she was watching TV. I told her how I was feeling about all of this, saying that I think it's definitely a sign. She was thinking, yeah, right, okay, whatever. So I then asked her to quickly grab the remote control to the TV and switch the channel to channel 2 right now. I said it with enthusiasm as I knew I was going to see something else that was going to definitely have something to do with it too. She picked up the remote and pointed it at the TV and pushed the button. I eagerly looked at the TV and saw nothing. And in her, but then I did notice a number 1 pop up in the upper corner of the screen. I then said to my wife, "Honey, channel 2, not 1." She had made a mistake, and in her haste of changing the channel, she accidentally pressed the number 1. Seeing as there is no programming on channel 1, the channel did not switch, and the television system waited for another number to be entered. She quickly pointed the remote control at the TV again and mistakenly hit another number 1, thus making the channel switch to 11. Now, if she had waited probably literally a half a second longer, the first one that she had pressed would have went away, as when you press a number on the remote control, they're like on a timer. And if you don't press another number within a given amount of time, it just fades away, it'll go away. But seeing as how she was quick to press the buttons in succession, the so-called accident of pressing the wrong number of 1 happened twice and consecutively. What my wife and I then saw on the TV was an English comedy program, for which I do not know the name of, but I will describe it to you in the best detail that I can remember. There were a bunch of actors on this stage that had the appearance of a laboratory. The actors were all wearing lab coats and safety glasses and safety gloves, and they were singing and dancing around, on this stage. There was like a stairs in the background, and it was like a laboratory, and they were just kind of doing this dancing and song number thing. But there were two main actors in the front, and in the center of the screen, these two actors in particular stood out by each of them wearing one very brightly colored glove on one of their hands, rather than the standard rubber gloves that all the other actors were wearing. The two main actors in front were wearing one regular colored glove and one brightly colored glove each. Which, that's kind of odd, right? Why would you wear two different colored gloves? So that's odd. That stands out right away. I believe one was female and one was a male, but I am not positive. As they stood side by side, the actor on the left was wearing a bright glove on their left hand, and the actor on the right was wearing a bright colored glove on their right hand. So the two brightly colored gloves were next to each other, but on different people. One actor's glove was bright green, and the other actor's glove was bright orange. We saw all of the actors dancing in unison, and all of the actors were lifting their hands up and pushing one hand at a time toward the screen and then back again. While the one arm was pulling the hand back, the other was pushing. So it was like this. So you have alternating hands, left, right, and so on. Their hands made the sign of a 2, or like when you make the peace sign with your pointer and middle finger. So here's what I was seeing. Are you kidding me? Okay. And then and this person over here, had their stuff going. And the person over here had their stuff going. So the two in the middle were coming right at me. But it was, two different hands from two different people. And what I was seeing in the middle was the bright orange and the bright green. Boom, boom, boom. Because each person was going like this, you know. And all of the actors were doing this. Two, 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 two. And this was the scene that I was watching. Oh, in the very middle of the screen, the two predominantly brightly colored gloves were smack dab in the middle of the screen. They were centered in on him. The brightly colored gloves moving in unison, one on one actor's hand, the other on the other actor's hand, moving in perfect unison. I didn't hear one word they were singing. My wife and I just let out a loud, whoa. Okay, now that's crazy. If you could have flipped the channel to any channel in the world, looking for a sign of two. Unless there was just a big two on the screen, what else could people have been doing on any show on any given day at any given moment to prove what was going on was a sign from God of twos? Everybody on the screen going like this, and the two right in front going like this. I mean, I was just floored. If that wasn't the clearest sign of a two that I had been witness to that day, I don't know one that could have been clearer to me at that precise moment. Praise God. That blew me away because of the timing and the faith of it. And what are the odds that my wife hits the hits the remote control twice incorrectly? Just and channel 11 pops up. Just nuts. Okay, so now what do I do? What does this mean? I am thinking my mind is racing for answers because I did not know at the time what this exactly meant. It is clearly a sign, I thought, but a sign like this that consisted of an entire day's worth of coincidences, which I will now call small miracles, had to mean something big, I thought. It had to. I have never in all my life heard of such a thing happening. I then thought back and went on out into the kitchen where I brought one of the newspapers. I thought of the first thing that I had noticed out of all the twos that came that day, and the first thing that triggered it for me and turned the light on was the two newspapers. So I thought maybe there's something in the newspapers that I had to see or read. My son and I started paging through the newspapers, and I looked at all the major headlines and nothing stuck out. I looked at the second section and nothing stood out. I looked at the second page of every section and nothing stood out. I thought again. I then looked at the classified section, read the want ads and job postings. I saw one job that I could qualify for and emailed the company. Dead end there too. What did it mean? Why was God using the number 2? So I went to work the next day and I told Rob and Steve, whom I work with, what had happened and asked them what it could possibly mean. They had no idea. Steve thought maybe a second chance. I did not know. And then about 2 weeks later, after much thinking, I came to the conclusion that it must be just simply a second sign. The second sign, my sign. It was the second sign that I had received, and it was given to me on the second Sunday after Easter. And for quite some time after that, I thought it was just that, my sign that I had asked for. And I was satisfied with that explanation. During the time after that, I prayed and read more and learned more about God and Jesus by reading articles online. My level of faith in God and Jesus Christ grew enormously. I didn't even own a Bible at the time. I told my friends at work that I would get one, though. I knew God would get one to me somehow. So this I did not worry about at all. And just a word of note, Rob at work, he was a correctional officer too. And he's the one that opened his Bible in front of me and shared his faith with me. And to this day, Rob now left the Department of Corrections, and he is now my pastor. He pastors a church now, but he was a prison guard. And because he had the boldness to share his faith with me, I'm now a believer because of his faith in sharing. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do when I'm sharing this story is I'm sharing my story and sharing my faith, hoping that it will inspire others. But Rob talked to me a lot about God and Jesus, and he was very patient, answered all my questions, and this kind of all started because of him. So I just want to give credit to Rob there, Pastor Rob now, but he was a correctional officer that I worked with, and that's the reason that I got saved. It was about 1.5 months later that my family and I went to California on a vacation trip to attend the second wedding of my wife's brother Jim. Before we left, I had made arrangements with some of my coworkers to look after my house and my 2 pet cats. Lucky, because that's what we thought he was when we picked him out of the litter, and Cece, named after Cris Carter, who played for the Minnesota Vikings football team. And here is a very interesting fact about Cris Carter that I would like to share with you. On December 18th, 1994, Cris Carter was at a Minnesota Moose hockey game in downtown St. Paul at the St. Paul Civic Center. He was there with his family, and I was there also with my family. I just happened to be wearing a Minnesota Vikings sweatshirt, and I thought it would be neat if I could get Cris Carter to sign it. I had to go and look for a black marker, and I found one from a friendly police officer. I went down to where Cris was sitting. It was just about 6 rows in front of me, and I asked him to sign it, and he gladly did so. I felt bad also that a lot of attention was brought upon him, and a lot of people were asking him for autographs, so much so that he could not even watch the hockey game he was attending. He ended up leaving before the game was even over. 6 days later after this happened, Cris Carter broke the single season reception record for the most catches in a single season. He finished the year with 122 catches. Here's the fun part. In 1995, he again caught 122 catches. The odds of that happening, just look up football stats, and the odds of that many catches 2 years in a row, 2 times in 2 consecutive years, giving him the all-time record for the most catches in back-to-back seasons with 244. He was also the second player ever to catch more than 100 catches in 2 consecutive years. When Cris Carter caught a touchdown pass, he always pointed up to God and thanked him. He did that every time. Cris Carter is the receiver that holds the second highest record for most touchdowns in a career behind Jerry Rice. Cris Carter, along with Jake Reed, became the only wide receiving twosome in NFL history with over 1,000 yards receiving for each of them in 4 straight NFL seasons. No other twosome has matched that. There were other twosomes to accomplish this feat, but they have done so in only 2 straight seasons. Cris and Jake have doubled the other's best. Now back to the trip to California. Before I left, I remembered saying a prayer. It was a rather simple prayer, so I thought. But the magnification to me and the ramification of that one simple prayer turned out to be one of the neatest series of things I had ever witnessed. The prayer was this. I prayed to God the Father to bless the bird feeder outside of my kitchen window, so that when my friends came over to my house to look after my cats, that if they had the chance to have a cold pop and sit at the kitchen table, there would be an abundance of bird watching there for them to enjoy. I love watching birds, especially hummingbirds. They are my favorite. We then left for California, and I thought nothing more of the prayer I had made. Our vacation to California was absolutely wonderful, and Jim's new bride, Jenny, It was lovely and wholesome. She treated us very kindly, and we met many of her relatives there. The wedding was one of the finest weddings I had ever attended. It was at an old historic winery. Kind of a symbol there for Jesus' first miracle. Turn the water into wine. While I was at Jim and Jenny's house, there was this really cool looking blue colored bird. It always came and hung out in their backyard and would go about the yard unconcerned or without fear of us. I saw it every day, multiple times. The reason I mention this is that when we did arrive home from California, the very next morning my wife and I were sitting at the kitchen table and we saw a chipping sparrow sitting on the window ledge. It was pecking and chirping and dancing across the ledge unlike any bird I have ever seen do before or anything remotely like it. And it kept chirping and pecking and chirping and pecking on the window. It was pecking on the window and chirping and dancing around the window and it was just like, what is this bird doing? This is nuts. This is odd. Very odd. Very odd. The ledges of the window on our house are not big. They are rather small. In fact, I would not even call it a ledge, but rather a small little half-inch lip of plastic where the window goes inside it. It's just the plastic piece that comes around the window. It's so tiny. I don't even know how a bird can sit on it. It's literally that tiny. It's not a ledge, but it was the plastic piece at the edge of the window, and this bird was on it. It doesn't make any sense. But this plastic, it seals the window from the weather when it's closed. The window goes down into it. Even as small as this so-called ledge was, this sparrow kept on doing this thing. Have you ever seen a bird do that before? Just sit on your ledge, and go back and forth, and peck on your window, and just chirp, 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 peck, 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 and you're like, what is this bird doing? It was fun. It was cute. It was the neatest thing. Um, So if you could imagine this scene yourself, how long do you think would be a reasonable time period that a bird would stay on a window ledge doing these things? A minute? Okay, I could see a minute. And that probably wouldn't be too weird. 2 minutes? 10 minutes? Okay? That might be stretching it. I mean, 10 minutes? Come on. Really? How about most of the entire day? Yeah, the entire day, almost all day. My wife and I watched that bird for a very long time. We sat at the table just a few feet away. It was a really cute bird, and just watching it made me wonder about how God can do things like this. I took it as another sign from God that to me was like a gift from Him personally. We went about our daily business and occasionally looked at the window and watched it again and again. One time I had a thought, maybe this bird really wants to come into the house. I quickly shrugged off the notion as if when a bird does happen to get itself caught within the confines of a home, it seems to panic and fly into the walls. I had seen this happen as a child. This would surely be a very stressful for it would surely be very stressful for the bird and injurious. But I had the thought again. So I went to the window and I opened it up about a foot high, and the chipping sparrow flew over to the pine tree about 15 feet away. Whenever the sparrow would occasionally fly away before, he would always return within a minute or two, back to the window ledge. So I waited. I waited for about 5 minutes, and he would not come back to the ledge. I closed the window, and a minute later, the sparrow came back to the ledge. Okay, that answered the notion of maybe it wants to come inside and visit. Well, actually, which actually was a relief. I wouldn't have known what to do with it once when it came in. And I would have also worried for its safety with my two cats. I think the sparrow finally left later in the afternoon. We had gone away to the store for a while, and when we returned near dusk, it was gone. The next morning, before I left for work, I looked again, but no sparrow. I wish I would have sat there all day now and just watched it. We had stuff we had to go do. The way this bird sat on our ledge, flew to the feeder and back many times over, flew to the pine tree and back many times over, I would say is rather rare and unique. The fact that it did this for most of the entire day, that was a miracle. I went to work that day and it was a good day. I talked about my vacation and the bird watching extravaganza on my window ledge. What was really interesting about this day was not what had happened at work, but what happened when I went home on my break. I saw another bird. As I pulled into my driveway, I looked down at my lawn and saw a solid gray colored bird. It was skinny and tall, around 9 or 10 inches tall, and it had no special markings. It was not like a pigeon or a dove, as it was too skinny and a little darker gray than they would be. It was a very plain looking and was all gray, all one color of gray. I had never seen a bird like this in my yard, and I still don't know what kind of bird it was. Well, at the time I wrote this, I didn't know. But now I know the bird was that I saw was a catbird. Now, interestingly enough, a catbird, my cat's name was Cece. And I think God was telling me something there. Because later I got this website, two.cc. And it was just another one of those cool little signs that God was directing my steps so that when the website came available and it came into my mind, it was like, this is the right thing to do. But the unique thing about this bird was that it was not afraid of me or my big truck I drive. I mean, literally, you pull up a truck next to a bird, they fly away. I mean, come on. As I drove into the driveway, I thought it would surely fly away, but it stayed in the grass in the yard about 10 feet away from my truck. That's not that far. 10 feet is not far, and it just sat there, and I'm like, really? Huh. Okay. Uh, um, I exited my truck, slammed the door shut, but to my belief that it would fly away, it stayed right there. I thought, wrong. This was not normal for a bird to do this. I stood next to my truck and stared at it again and again for another short time, and then I went into my house, told my wife about it. She said that she could not go and look at it because she was not wearing any contact lenses and didn't have her eyeglasses. I said, oh, well, you're going to miss it then. I looked on the kitchen counter, and my wife had some mail to be put in the mailbox. I took the mail outside and looked for the bird again. It was not in the yard where I had seen it last. But as I looked up into the nearby tree, I saw it on a branch, and it saw me. As I walked down the steps and headed toward the mailbox, the bird flew out of the tree and landed back down in the grass where it was before. I walked by my truck, which placed me about 10 feet away from the bird again, and I stopped. We looked at each other. Again, I started walking again towards the mailbox, and the bird surprised me by flying alongside of me and landing 10 feet away from me again. We stared at each other again, and I thanked Father for this unique gift of this bird's company. This is kind of just weird. But my break from work was only so long, and I had to go. So I started walking closer to the mailbox, and when I was about 15 feet away from the mailbox, the bird flew right up and landed directly on top of my mailbox. Now, what a sight that was. Unbelievable, I thought. I'm like, are you kidding me? Such a simple thing, but it meant so much to me. I just stood there, dead in my tracks and full of amazement. I'm like, I slowly approached the mailbox, and when I was about 10 feet away from it, the bird flew across the street and landed in the other yard and watched me put the mail in. I guess the bird had a comfort zone of 10 feet. I returned into the house and told my wife of the neat thing that had just occurred with this bird. I shared the story at work with my coworkers. This was one thing that no one else witnessed. It was another gift for me alone. So nobody witnessed this, but it was just, that one was just me all by myself. Okay, at this point we're gonna call this the end. The bird miracles, bird signs. We're gonna end this this is going to be the end of part 2. So I hope you like the story so far, and there's more coming. In fact, there's another bird thing coming here. It was just like a little bird season, but come back now. Come back and listen to part 3. I hope you're digging this. I hope you're liking this. Anyway, thanks for coming and watching and listening. God bless. Take care.